Welcome to QX Church. I'm Pastor Scott Conway. Today's lesson is called Happy in the Hard Times. Happy in the hard times. Last time we talked about for the love of money. We talked about the idea that it's not the pursuit of money in and of itself that is the problem. It's the avarice. It's when you're willing to compromise your values, when you're willing to compromise what's right, when you're willing to sacrifice people, and you're willing to sacrifice the more important things in pursuit of money. That's the problem. When you're hoarding, when you have this insecurity, almost this neurotic, even a psychotic pursuit of cash, that's a problem. Another challenge we run into in the pursuit of adequate abundance to be able to pay our bills and do the things that are ours to do, and to be able to live a life, is how hard it gets sometimes. And that we often live lives of constant struggle, and occasionally even build our lives so that there is struggle. Can we have happiness in those hard times? We're using James chapter 1, verses 2 through 4 for this, and the point here being, be joyful, even in hard times. So James chapter 1, verses 2 through 4 reads, "Consider it all joy, brethren, when you encounter many kinds of trials, knowing that the testing of your faith produces endurance. And let endurance have its perfect result, that you may be whole and complete, lacking in nothing." So James observes that when we encounter a lot of different kinds of problems, it's a test of faith. And that he says that we should consider it all joy, consider it pure joy. When you encounter diverse trials, many kinds of trials, many kinds of tests, many kinds of challenges, many kinds of problems. Knowing that this is a test of your faith. And that the testing of your faith produces endurance. Let endurance have its perfect result, that you may be whole and complete, lacking in nothing. Because it's a test, and a test of faith, well, let's look at what test and faith is, and what a test of faith would be. So a test is an opportunity to show what you do know, and find out what you do not know. And the various types of tests will test this at different levels. But that's what you do on a test. You show what you know. Very often you find out what you don't know. And sometimes you show what you know under the circumstances of the test, and you find out what you don't know, or at least what you can't think of, under the circumstances of the test. So some people have really bad test anxiety. They may know the information when they don't really need it, but when the pressure's on and now it counts, they freeze up and their brain can't get access to the information. Well, that's a test. It's an opportunity to show what you do know, and what you do know well enough to be able to demonstrate that knowledge in that moment when that knowledge is called for, in as simple a thing as a test. In martial arts, for self-defense, your test is when a violent situation arises and you need to use your skills to resolve the situation. That's a test. That's an opportunity for you to show what you know and to find out what you do not know. Hopefully, you find out that what you know is adequate to defeat the bad guy. Now, by this definition, there's no failure, because you show what you know, and you know what you know, and you don't know what you don't know, and you find out what you don't know. So by this definition of a test, there is no failure in test. Keep in mind, of course, you may have a graded outcome. You will have an outcome based upon the interplay of what you know and what you don't know, what you can think of in time and what you don't think of until later. And that particular outcome may not satisfy you. And that's for this particular performance, under these particular circumstances, the right here, right now. This is the knowledge that showed up. This is the skill that showed up. This is what I was able to do under these circumstances. And It may inform me how to prepare differently at some future point in time. Now, in most things in life, school tests are graded, but in most things in life, that's not the way it works. In most things in life, it allows you to prepare more and try again, even on a test level. There was a young man who had asked for my help preparing for his driver's test, and I had one condition: schedule your test. After you schedule your test 2 or 3 weeks out, then I will prepare you for your test. But what I'm not going to do is prepare you for a test if the test isn't coming. Because some people get in a habit that because in school the tests are imposed upon you, and it shows up whether you're ready or not, you have that feeling, oh, I wish the test wasn't today, I don't feel ready. But then later on in life, when you can schedule your tests, a lot of people want to feel ready before they'll even schedule the test. Well, very often, we never feel ready. Because to some people, ready means an absolute 100% certainty we will for sure pass. A lot of life doesn't come with that level of certainty. Every test has a certain level of anxiety, a certain level of possibility of not getting the desired outcome. And if we're walking into tests only when we're 100% sure, we're probably over-preparing and probably playing too small. And so we have to be willing to show up at a test and find out. Now, I'm really good at tests. I tend to over-test my actual knowledge. But even so, when I sat down for the last big professional exam that I took was the real estate broker exam, and before that was the state bar to become a lawyer. And my response to it is like, well, I know what I know, and I'm going to go show what I know and find out what I don't know. And they'll let me know if that's enough to become a lawyer or that's enough to become a real estate broker. And if it's not, they send the test back. So I can see what I'm lacking, and I'll find out what I don't know, so I know what to go study at a higher level to prepare to take it again. Most of life works this way. Most of life works with a prepare, do your best, prepare more, do better, prepare more, do even better, prepare more, and now you've got the outcome you want. Not necessarily in 3 or 4 tries, but we can keep getting better. When you start a new job, the question isn't, have I mastered all the skills I need for this job? The question is, am I good enough to begin? And if I'm good enough to begin and I continue to get better, then by the time I've really mastered this job, chances are high I'm ready to move on to the next job. And the question is, am I good enough to begin the job at the next level? And so on and so on. That's how life usually works, and the tests in life are an opportunity to show what we do know, find out what we don't know, so we can do something about what we know, or what we don't know. Now, proving. Proving is a particular type of test. Proving is a test to pass, where you're specifically given the test, or you specifically accept the test, or you specifically enter into the test in order to pass the test, to show, yes, I know. Sometimes tests are given to find out. You're going to find out what you know and find out what you don't know and find out what that's worth in the confines of this particular type of examination. Sometimes tests are actually given with the actual goal that someone failed, that you want to show that they don't know. When we're talking about divine tests, very often when we talk about Satan testing you, that his goal is that you fail. And you can go to Job and take a look at Job, where Job challenged God over, Satan challenged God over Job, and the two of them had a contest. From Satan, it was a test intended for Job's failure. From God, it was a test to prove Job. And when that's the case, when the test is given or taken with the specific purpose of demonstrating that you do know or you can do, that's proving. So sometimes when I'm doing something, I'll do it in order to prove that I can do it. I'm doing it to show people, yes, I can. Very often I'll do that as an instructor, where I will put myself in a situation to put something that I'm teaching to the test in order to show the students, yes, this works if you do it this way. Yes, I practice this. Yes, I train. And yes, this works. Watch. And I'll have someone resist. I'll have someone not give it to me. So they can see that, yes, it works if you do it correctly. Now, back down and let's take it easy. Be more cooperative because you're just learning this. And so you have 3 types of tests. The core test is an opportunity to show what you do know, find out what you don't know. A test or a temptation or a trial in order to make you fail is sometimes done either at a more divine level or a more altruistic or beneficial level to show you that you don't know what you think you know. That you really can't do what you think you can do. And that you need to find out before the stakes are too high. And that if you can find out before the stakes are too high, you know not to enter into that thing. So a test given in order to make you fail isn't always a bad thing, because sometimes you'll even walk into a test because you really don't know. And you want to test it at a smaller level before you play it at a bigger level. But that test to prove is the test you do in order to pass. It's a test that is given in order that you pass. So faith is the logical extension from what you do know to what you do not know for sure. Faith, the logical extension from what you do know to what you do not know for sure. So by this definition, you first must know things. You must have core information, somewhat verifiable information, information that your experience, your training, your education, your observation tells you is true, and that you know it's true. And then you have to trust past what you know. And what you trust past that knowledge must make sense given what you know. Now, blind faith, on the other hand, is trusting with no evidence, or trusting despite the evidence. It's being blind to knowledge and or blind to logic. So someone can be blind to both knowledge and logic, or they can be blind to either knowledge or logic. Faith requires knowledge. If you have no starting knowledge to begin from, you can't logically extend from that knowledge. And then you have to have logic. That your extension past what you actually know has to make sense. So a test of faith, then, is the opportunity to show your trust in the logical extension from what you know. So let's take a look at James 1:2-4 again. Consider it all joy, brethren, when you encounter many kinds of trials, knowing the testing of your faith produces endurance. And let endurance have its perfect result, that you may be whole and complete, lacking in nothing. Consider it all joy, brethren, when you encounter many kinds of trials, knowing that you have the opportunity to show your trust in the logical extension from what you know. And that showing your trust in the logical extension from what you know produces endurance. And let endurance have its perfect result. Let it finish its job. Let it get to its end game. Let it finish, that you may be whole, that you may be complete, that you may be lacking in nothing. So a test of faith shows your trust and helps build your trust. It shows your ability to think through the principles, the logical extension, and to be able to demonstrate that and strengthen that and be better at that. Many kinds of problems give us a chance to show what principles we understand, to show what principles we can apply, and how we can understand our principles and apply them to new situations, to unique situations, the things that are a little different than we've ever faced before. Maybe it's kind of the same, but now there's different people involved. Maybe it's kind of works the same way, but it's a different thing. And that when we understand and can apply principles, we can deal with more and more unique situations. When we understand and apply the principles, we can see, okay, logically, this and this and that would also have to be true. So let me give it a try. And maybe it'll be enough. Maybe it won't. We'll find out as we go. When we get to find out what principles we need to learn, what we need to refine, what we need to adapt, what we need to change, we get more knowledge. When we get to logically apply them to our goals and see what outcome we produce, we get to find out how right we were or how wrong we were. We get to make better choices, craft better plans, and apply our growing understanding, our growing insight, our growing knowledge, and live our growing faith, our growing extension from what we know to what we do not yet know for sure. So related to a test of my faith is proving my faith. That I show my trust, that I say I have trust, so I show my trust. I demonstrate my faith with my works. I show, if I say I believe it, what does that actually mean in the level of action? So proving my faith is showing my trust by my actions, and my rightness by my outcomes. Now I can show my trust by my actions, but if I don't get the outcome that I thought I was going to get, and the outcome I do get is not a rational probability based upon my own expression of the principles, I have some learning to do. But I show how right I was in my approach with my principles by the outcomes I produce. And the more you exercise the testing of your faith, that you know these things, you know how this works. And yes, outcomes may be probabilistic, but that you know that they're probabilistic when you go in. And the outcome that you get either fulfills the probability, fulfills a lesser probability, fulfills a possibility, because a lot of the outcomes aren't certainties, they're probabilities, and that you get the outcomes that you expected given your actions demonstrates your faith. That you showed your trust by taking actual action. A funny example from my own history is when we built the house up on Ridgemore that we moved into back in 1977. The deck flexed a lot more than it seemed like it ought to flex. Well, the general contractor was a really big guy, over 300 pounds. And he kept saying, no, it's fine. And so my mother stepped out there, and 100-pound mom bounces up and down and shows like how much the wood flexes. Now she's 100 pounds, so she can do that. And she told the guys, like, okay, if you're so sure that that's fine, you step out there and you bounce up and down. And if you trust it enough to do that, I'll let it go and I'll just take care of it myself. Well, this 300-pound man looked at how much it was flexing under the weight of this tiny little 100-pound woman. And he decided he didn't feel entirely comfortable stepping out there and bouncing up and down. And sent somebody out to reinforce it. As it turned out, what had happened is the supports were spaced close enough together if the boards went straight across, but the boards were laid at the diagonal. And because they were laid at the diagonal, a squared plus b squared equals c squared, that the space that they needed to be about a third, almost half shorter. And they just put a reinforcement in between each one, and then it was fine. And so he said it was fine. He said he trusted it. He was unwilling to take action to show that, which revealed that his trust was just words. So likewise for us, to prove my faith, I show my trust. Not just by saying the things I think I'm supposed to say. Saying what I'm supposed to say shows that I know what the answer is. The next level is good. Now do what you're supposed to do. You know what the answer is because you can say what you're supposed to say. Now show your trust in that answer by doing what you're supposed to do. So proving my faith is showing my trust by my actions. And then the big one, though, is I show how right I am, how correct I am, how what I knew was true, how the logical extension really was logical by my outcome. When we pass a test of faith, and God knows we'll pass, and we gain greater certainty that we will pass, we get endurance. The ability to go through these things, the ability to bear burdens, the ability to persist, that tenacity to hang on, that patience to wait for the fullness of time with the good attitude, with a good heart, with a clean heart and the right spirit. The endurance is to go through the process, and to go through the process of continuous learning, always growing up in our maturity. Something that I learned from my mother, who is 74 right now as I'm recording this, is that you're either growing up or you're growing old. Growing, not sure which way you're going. She quips sometimes even at 74 that she's going to have to decide what she wants to be when she grows up. That growing up is a never-ending process. Growing old, she says, is optional. Growing up is mandatory. Most people do that backwards. They'll grow old, and they won't grow up. And by the way, part of growing old in the way we talk about it is when you lose your childlikeness. You stop being playful. You stop being joyful. You stop being loving. You kind of get old and cranky and crotchety, judgmental, that your heart and your soul dries out. But growing up means you keep your childlikeness, and then what you grow out of is childishness. You grow up out of selfishness. You grow up out of immaturity. You grow up out of responsibility. That's growing up, or irresponsibility, and you leave those things behind. So always growing up in our maturity. Always growing deeper in wisdom, where you begin to understand deep truths, hard truths, and that you can distill those down and apply them. And you may not always necessarily be able to find words for them, but that as you go through things, you kind of begin to get a sense of things. You might not always be able to articulate it or quite put your finger on it, but when you've actually gone through things, when you've been in the middle of it, sometimes you begin to get a sense of it. Sometimes you can confirm it with outside information. It's like a master craftsman looking at something and going, I'm not sure that's quite level. And to everyone else, it looks perfectly level. And then they take the 3-foot level and they put it up on the shelf and they say it's off just a little bit. And it's because the eyes of the master, the eyes of someone who has enough experience, who has been through enough of these projects, who has seen enough of these things, can kind of tell that that's a little off. Let me double check that. And that's growing deeper in wisdom, where you may not always be able to explain it, but you kind of have a sense of it. And then always getting in better harmony with more and more of God's creation. So the law of harmony basically just says that whatever is coming to you, you're in harmony with. That you're lined up for it in some way, shape, or form. And so if and by the way, I may not know I'm lined up with it. So I may have something where I'm in the way of something coming down at me, and I don't know that I'm in the way of the thing. I had several friends that worked for a major employer around town. 30 to 40,000 people worked for this company directly and indirectly, and they shut down their local plant. It not only put the 35-ish thousand people out of work directly, but it rippled out from there. Because wherever those employees were concentrated, all those local businesses lost business. And one of them was a martial arts friend of mine, where over a third of his students, maybe half of his students, worked for that company. And then, poof, his income gets slashed in half. Well, his expenses don't get slashed in half, just his income gets slashed in half. And that gets to be a problem. And so sometimes, we go through stuff and we find out that we were in harmony with an outcome we didn't know we were in harmony with. That he didn't realize what was coming. But he was all lined up for that. He just didn't realize he was lined up for that. To him, it felt pretty secure that most of my students work for this big employer that's been around here for decades, so I know they make good money, I know they have good solid jobs, I know I'm safe. Well, it turned out he wasn't safe, but he did not know he was not safe. Now, sometimes it goes the other way, where we are in harmony with a thing coming our way, and we don't know how great it is. We don't know whose path we're going to cross. We don't know who this person is. We just do something nice because we do nice things. And it just turns out that this person we're nice to is in a position to do something incredible for us. So likewise, as part of the law of harmony, getting in better harmony with more and more of God's creations, there's I almost say young lady. At my age, if you're under the age of 50, you're a young lady, but younger than me, who has never really seen herself as a professional, but she's ended up in harmony with some people who are looking for someone they can trust. Their experience has shown that finding a trustworthy person is the hardest thing in the world. And they have come to trust her. And what they've figured out is, look, we can just find people that have the qualifications. That's a learnable skill. What we have trouble finding is someone we can trust. And all she was doing was just her being her around the people she was around, and ends up in harmony with a potential opportunity. So you never know. And likewise, you can get out of harmony with something. As simple a thing as handling one conversation poorly eliminates the potential of a donor to a not-for-profit. I was just reading an article where one word, literally one word, was the final straw that tipped things from one side to the other in what turned out to be a multi-billion-dollar deal between two competitors. That one had first crack. And they were kind of playing a little fast and loose with some things. And it was borderline. And someone misspoke. As simple a thing as got their name wrong. And said, that's it. And he left. Made a deal with another company. Ends up being a multi-billion-dollar deal. The first company was in harmony to get the deal. And they blew it. They got out of harmony. Which gave the other company a shot. And the other company took their shot, got their deal, made their billions. So endurance is to go through the process. To go through the hard times, to persevere, to have the tenacity, to still be looking, to still be learning, to still be amassing that deep wisdom, seeking that clean understanding. To grow up in whatever way we need to continue to grow up, to get more mature, more sophisticated, and growing deeper in the wisdom and being able to craft and hone and dial in on that harmony. and let endurance have its perfect result. Let it finish its job. Let it do everything endurance is supposed to do. Cooperate with the design of all of this and be in harmony with how God engineered the universe. The universe is engineered as a university, meaning that it's engineered in a way to let us learn. And when we go through diverse trials of many kinds, difficult things, problems, when we face challenges, when we have these things come up, that's our tuition. We're paying the tuition. We're going through the education. But are we going to learn anything? Because if we learn, we can do better next time. If we don't learn, well, then we won't do better next time. When you're dealing with decamillionaires, people who are worth $10 million or more, so someone who has 8 figures of net worth, usually, most commonly, they made their money in business, and often they sold their business. An interesting thing on that path, though, is that they average, if you take the people who they made their money in their lifetime, on average, they have between 3 and 4 bankruptcies. Meaning between 3 and 4 times, so if you're 3.5 on average, they have had to file, either personally or in their business, a Chapter 7, Chapter 11, or Chapter 13 bankruptcy. And what had happened, though, is they go bankrupt, they learned some things. They figured out a little bit about what went wrong. They figured out how to do a little bit better next time. And they took another crack at it. They fixed the fixable. They refined their approach. And then very often they went bankrupt again. And they went bankrupt again. But here's one of the keys. If you don't keep going bankrupt for the exact same reasons, you're learning. They keep getting further and further down the path. They do better and better until they get to that shot where now they make it. Now they hit that point of crisis in the business, and there's always going to be crises. They hit a point of crisis that might have destroyed them before, and they know how to navigate it. Then they get to the next one, and they know how to navigate. And they get to the next one, and they know how to navigate. And they finally get to the smoother sailing. Smoother sailing. There's never a point where there's never any problems. There's never a point where there's no more challenges. But you can get to a place where, okay, now it's pretty clean. Now we can make better decisions. Now we're less likely to go into crisis mode where something's enormously important and desperately urgent. And you can begin to look down the road and begin to pre-solve things you see coming. So that's part of being whole and complete, lacking in nothing. As we keep increasing our harmony with God's creation, we are whole, we are complete, we lack in nothing, we live an abundant life. And it opens up the doors to potentials and possibilities. So count it pure joy. Count it joy when you're in the struggle. So joy in the struggle, upon reflection, and now this part's interesting, because I've talked to a lot of couples. Upon reflection, very many successful couples discover, much to their own surprise, that they had more joy in the tough times than they did after they got everything they thought they wanted. Now, there does seem to be a theme. Now, by the way, I've noticed a similar thing in married couples in particular is what I'm talking about, but also talking about business partners. We've had the same thing in business partners and small groups of friends who form a business team that go out to struggle for something, or a circle of friends that have any kind of goal, or a team that's working the way forward, or a band that's trying to make it big. They keep finding that there is joy in the struggle. And that very often, when they get to the other side of the struggle is when they actually start to have problems. Even when it's individuals where, if I'm all I have, and I had to be enough, and I was enough. But then I get to the success, and now I don't know what to do. I was listening to a man who had been working for years to kind of rebuild his life. He had built up an empire worth over $20 million. And it just caved in on itself. And once he got humbled and he learned his lessons, he went about rebuilding. And then ultimately, he was so successful, he sold off his businesses, and now he's independently wealthy, and he can go to Hawaii and sit on a beach, and he can just enjoy the rest of his life and relax. He said it lasted about 3 days. And by day 3 of sitting on that beach, it wasn't relaxing anymore. It was boring. This thing he had envisioned, he realized, like, you know what? Retiring from doesn't seem to work for me. I need to do something. And so he got back in the business game. Now he could play it differently now, because now he's not pursuing concretely, I have to get this goal, and sacrificing for the goal. You can do it much more relaxed, much more casually, because he really doesn't need the money. But he wanted something to do, someplace to move forward, someplace where there was the dollars and cents to keep score by, because he knew how to do that. And he just, as an individual, found that there was joy in the struggle. There was joy in the work. There was joy in the uncertainty. There was joy in the striving to build a thing. And that he didn't find joy in sitting on the beach watching the waves roll in for more than 2 days. So whether we're talking about an individual, you're talking about a married couple, you're talking about business partners, you're talking about a business team, the same thing applies. Because there's this vision, this energy, when you have this idea and you're trying to manifest this idea, and you're all on the same page because you have this vision that you're pursuing. Which is one of the things that they talk about, is they were on the same page. There was a clear joint goal. Not just the husband's off trying to do a thing or the wife's off trying to do a thing. That there's teamwork. They both know what it is they're trying to achieve. Now, even if they're not working together, sometimes they're like, I'll keep the home fires burning while you go do that. Or while you're in pursuit of your next level degree, I'll work full time so that we can pay the tuition so you can finish your school. Or I'll cover all of the bills while you're doing the training that doesn't make much money, or while you have your extended internship time so that you can get through that. I will basically be a single person because you're gone so much, and when you're home, you're just asleep. And I'll take care of the home, and I'll take care of the kids while you get through your residency. Whatever it was, they were on the same page. The clear joint goal. They were both focused on achieving that particular goal. Both of them knew exactly what it was. And they were both working in that direction. They teamed up against the problems. When you live in hard times, the most intense problems are commonly expected. Now, this is true whether you're single, married, working as a solopreneur, with a team, is there's going to be problems. And you expect there to be problems in the building phase. You expect there to be struggle. You expect there to be opposition. You expect there to be risk, because you're early enough in the game that not winning means you lose. You get further down the game, you get to a place where, like, well, either we win or we don't win, but we're doing okay. There's nothing really at stake other than, do we move forward or do we not move forward? But when you're in the level of the game where you're crashing and burning, or you're not crashing and burning, if you can just get far enough along to be okay, sometimes that's your win, while you try to battle your way forward. But you team up against the problems. You expect to face the problems, and you rally when there's problems. When there's an inevitable financial crunch, the need for mutual sacrifice, when either side sacrifices for the other, they both know what they're sacrificing for. The team knows what they're sacrificing for. When I'm doing it by myself, I know what I'm sacrificing for. I have a vision. I have this compelling future that I am aiming for. This thing I believe I can get to, and I understand that the reason I'm going through this time of sacrifice, the reason I'm eating the food that I'm eating, that I'm sleeping where I'm sleeping, that I'm missing out on what I'm missing out on is because I have a goal I am pursuing that is important enough to me to keep me going and make me willing to sacrifice. So why does success sometimes break teamwork? And why does success sometimes become someone's ruin? Well, what sometimes happens after success is that some of these things change. They stop being on the same page. They have different goals, different desires, different ways they want things to look. And when things like that start to happen, when you're not on the same page anymore, you're not in partnership. When you don't have to sacrifice for that particular goal and now things become optional, what are the options going to be? When you're fighting over money because now you have some, you're fighting over the priorities. Like, okay, now that we've gotten through this, what do we do? And one person says, oh, we can finally move into that nice house in that great neighborhood. And the other person goes, oh, we can finally travel the world. Well, if you don't have the money to do both, you might fight over which one you do. And sometimes I was talking to one husband in particular, and he's your proverbial workaholic. For him, the whole goal of playing the game and winning is so you can go play a bigger game. Now, his wife, on the other hand, was originally willing to sacrifice to play the game to a win, but now she began to realize, oh, whoa, wait a minute, there's no win for you. That you want us to keep playing the game. That when do we relax? When do we have a life? When do we be a family? When do we have a vacation? When do we all, settle down together, even for a couple of weeks, doing something nice with all this money that we won, instead of just jumping right into the next thing and the next thing and the next thing? Is there anywhere in here where the people become a priority? Or just the project's always a priority? And her willingness to sacrifice has shifted as she's realized, oh, wait, no, I'm not sacrificing to get a win. I'm just sacrificing to get into a bigger game. And then what happens when we win there? Oh, we just do another bigger game, and then a bigger game after that. So what you're telling me is, this is my life. You want this to be my life, not a season of my life that has an end, so I can focus on being a mother, and I can focus on being a wife, and I can focus on having a home. And so that creates the shift. So success sometimes breaks teamwork because you get off of the same page, because your goals change, your desires change, and you're not on the exact same page anymore. This happens with individuals too. It's okay, well, I got that, and I thought it would feel different. Is this all there is? Now, for the guy who's sitting on the beach, you're realizing, yeah, this is boring. I want to do more business. I'm not going to be as consumed by it as I was getting here, but I need to do something. And so he didn't self-destruct. Sometimes people self-destruct. Their success self-destructs them because they harbor this illusion that if I can get there, then I can be happy. And then they get there and go, but I'm not happy. And then they engage in escapist behaviors intended to numb the emptiness in them that they were shocked was still there. They begin to engage sometimes in self-sabotaging, self-destructive behaviors. And they collapse the whole thing. And sometimes it's a thermostat effect with what we call friction. Sometimes it's a self-sabotage to get back down on the bottom so they can enjoy the struggle again. And sometimes it's as simple a thing and as big a thing as they thought this would be it. They thought this would fill their heart. And it doesn't. Because they weren't joyful along the way. They kept figuring, well, when I get there, then I can be joyful. Oh, it's not here. I need to get to the next one. Oh, it's not here either. I need to get to the next one. It's not here anyway. Is this all there is? Is this emptiness all there is? And they never found their joy in Jesus. They never found their joy in love. They never found their joy even just within themselves. They always assumed it was over the next hill, it was at the next goal, it was at the next threshold. And rather than joyfully achieving, they kept achieving to try to be joyful, instead of loving their life as they achieved. They hoped that if they achieved, they could have a life they loved. And so whether you do this as a partnership, whether you do this as a couple, whether you do this as a work team, whether you do this as a mastermind, you got to keep an eye on these things. Sometimes they start to team up with the problems against one another. That there's this whole hero, villain, victim thing. And so long as you know what the struggle is and you hear that you're both trying to make it better, that's the hero. But at some point when things are going wrong, then you start to blame the other person. You cast them in the role of the villain. And you cast yourself in the role of the victim. And then, bizarrely enough, then you ask them to make it better, which is you cast them in the role of the villain, you argue and fight to convince them they're the villain, and then you ask them to be the hero. In which case, why were you arguing that they were the villain if you really wanted them to be the hero? But that's a whole lesson by itself. But sometimes they create problems, intentionally or not, and attack one another over them, or if you're solo, attack yourself over the problems that you yourself created. That you behaved your way into a situation. And then you beat yourself up or you beat up the other person over the situation that you could fix. Sometimes they call it self-created drama. You either created the situation yourself or you had an easy out and you didn't take it. And then they start to battle with each other. People begin to battle with themselves rather than battle through the problems. So some people never even have the teamwork of struggle. Many teams have never had the benefit of getting to achievement before they stopped being on the same page. And they forgot that they were partners, not opponents. That they forgot to work together. They forgot to set aside all these more petty differences while they pursued the bigger goal. Sometimes they forgot to solve the solvable on the way to the bigger goal. That they just ignored the issues on the way to the bigger goal, not stopping to look at the things they were ignoring to see, is this going to be a problem later on? There are a lot of rather petty things you can just ignore for a while, and you'll be fine. But there's some things that will metastasize if you don't get to them. And at least one benefit of the couples that struggle toward a great goal is they already know that they have the tools to do it right. If they maintain the teamwork through the struggle, they know they already know how to do it. They just need to put those tools back in play. But sometimes the team doesn't survive the struggle. So a key here is just be on the same page. Be on the same page. Have something you're both working toward. Have something the whole team is working toward. And if you're solo, know what it is you're working toward. Something that consistently requires something of you, something of each of you, something of every member of the team. Set a goal big enough to inspire you. To inspire you as an individual, to inspire both of you as a couple, to inspire the two of you as business partners, to inspire the whole team. Set a goal with a clear enough plan that both of you know exactly what is required of you to get there. Big team. Team up against problems. When you have inevitable problems, always be on the same side against the problem. Always look for solutions. Be solution-oriented. As soon as you're looking for who to blame, you're looking for how can I claim powerlessness by putting all the power in someone else's hands. As soon as you're looking for excuses, you're looking for how can I give myself permission to have this be true and blame that on something else. When you're justifying, you're saying, how can I make what I did seem like it was the right thing to do? When you're rationalizing is, how can I make what I did seem like the rational thing to do? All you really want to do is look for solutions. Just solve the dang problem. And be focused on the solution. Now, does that mean you can't look for how did this happen? Who did this come through? What are the mechanisms in play here? How can we keep the problem from happening again? Yes, all those things are true in pursuit of a solution. Not just the solution the right here, right now, but creating a structural solution might require you find out if the same person is creating a problem. And you may need to remove a person from a team. And in fact, in one team that I'm working on, one person got himself removed for excessive greed and excessive emotional intensity and excessive selfishness. And that, we couldn't have a person like that on the team. Because our team needs to look out for the team. You can't have people looking out for themselves who have an opportunity to cheat the rest of the team. So you team up against the problems. You rally yourself against the problems. You look for the solution to the problem, and everything you do is aimed at that solution. Even if rationalizations, justifications, excuses, blame, all that might be involved, that's not what you're doing. You are pursuing a solution, and the rest of the stuff is in service to, as a tool, if necessary, towards solving the problem. When you have the inevitable challenges, always be a team to overcome the challenges. And as you expand the team, a key focus needs to be on the teamwork of the team. Curate your team. Curating your team, curating your community. Now, this is something that I'm just learning. How important it is to kind of carefully pick and choose who's on your team. So, my business partner and I are in the place where, what we need to pick and choose more is people we can rely upon, people we can trust, the skills we can teach, the stuff we can send people to a training for, take a class, give them a program, give them a book. The skills we can do. What we need is someone who has the character, someone who has the personality, someone we can rely upon, who we can trust. And we find that that's the hardest part about curating a team. For me as a martial arts instructor, of curating my team of someone who will do their minutes a day. If you don't want to do your minute a day, that's totally okay. We are not the dojo for you. That you need to review your material every month, and if you don't want to review your material every month, that's okay. Just we're not the dojo for you. You need a dojo that doesn't need a minute a day from you. You need a dojo that doesn't need a monthly review from you. And so as we're moving forward, that's part of curating the community, curating your team, curating who you invite on your team and how closely you work. A close friend of mine has been learning that a lot of people he was almost teamed up with are not the sort of people he wants to be teamed up with. And he's very, very happy that he learned what he's learned before he was entangled in business with them. So I use the word problem, I use the word challenge. These have two clean definitions for me. A problem is a thing where if you fail to solve, you're going to lose. That's a problem. Where something shows up, you can't ignore problems without suffering loss. So a problem is fail to solve and lose, solve and you're back even. A challenge is something if you fail to overcome and you're even. And if you overcome, you win. Now something can be both. Where something comes up and it's going to be a problem, which means you got to do something about it, because if you don't do anything about it, it's going to do damage. But if you solve this problem, you're going to be ahead of the game, which means it's both a problem and a challenge. So challenges, though, generally speaking, if they're not also problems, are optional. Because you can look at all of your potential challenges, which means all of your opportunities to go through something difficult to get some kind of a win, and you can pick and choose what challenges you want to face because challenges are optional. Problems will impose their priority upon you. Now, the priority of a problem depends on a couple of things. One is how important is it? And how important the problem is based upon how much damage will this one do if we don't do anything about it. And the other characteristic is the urgency of the problem is, when does this have to be addressed? So if the problem is there's a big customer on the phone right now, well, the right now part is urgent. They're on the phone right now. And if you need to talk to them right now, or you're going to lose their business, that's urgent. If they're a big enough customer to make a difference, that's important. And so you have a problem. If you don't solve this urgent, important problem, you will lose. You will lose right now, and you will lose big. Very first job I had working, there was two brothers that worked together on a company. They had two locations. Each of them ran one of them. And combined, they were 25% of our business. And they knew they were 25% of our business. And the balance was, how do we balance our own business interests with keeping them as a customer? Because they were trying to use their leverage for being a quarter of our income, our gross income. Which means that if you lose the quarter of your gross income, you might have lost half of your profit or all of your profit. And they knew they had this leverage. But then what ended up happening is that the two main suppliers to the brothers got together and talked and basically decided, like, okay, we don't want to be put into competition with each other in a way that's going to be hurtful to ourselves. So let's mutually agree that neither one of us is willing to lose money to get them as a customer. And they both agreed. It's like, okay, that sounds reasonable, that we'll still compete with one another on service and such, but we'll only go so low on price because we're not going to lose money to have a customer that's not a customer. That's a charity. And so if you understand that, okay, that's problems. And problems impose their priority by how urgent they are and how important they are. And how important they are is how much damage they're going to do if you don't solve them. And how urgent they are is how much time do you have to deal with it. Some problems aren't quite as urgent. Like we're facing a problem right now that we have about 3 weeks. But when you have someone on the phone right now, the problem might be so urgent, you have 10 minutes to deal with this. I had a situation where we had 2 weeks for a resolution. The whole problem was created in about 4 hours. We went from no problem at all to massive problem in 4 hours. And we had to solve it. Now, a challenge, on the other hand, has no particular priority. You can decide how you're going to prioritize your challenges. Some people will prioritize challenges based upon what they can most easily overcome and get all these little wins with easy overcoming. Some will go after the biggest challenges with the biggest wins no matter how hard they are because they see the big win. I prefer to kind of do a balance of in between. Now, I like the quick and easy challenges, but what I'm looking for is what I call the most bang for your buck, where for the resources it will take in time and energy and money, whatever, what is the probable outcome of picking that challenge? And then you just leverage your challenges. And if something's going to take me, 3 days to do, well, what's the outcome? What's my payoff for 3 days? What's my opportunity loss if I spend 3 days on this instead of 3 days on that? And so that's how you prioritize your challenges. You just figure out, well, which wins do I want? Which wins are the most valuable to me? What is the challenge? What is the thing that has to be overcome? What is the application of resources to get to that win? And you pick and choose what you're going to do based upon a balance between the energy and resources that will take and the win that you'll get. So to do all of this, whether you're solving problems that will impose their priority on you, and when you get far enough down the path so you don't have to keep solving problems, now you can pursue challenges more, and then you get to pick and choose your challenges and deal with the occasional problem. And there's going to be an occasional have to put out a fire. But that's not your day-to-day all the time, every single day for hours and chunks of your day. And now you can start looking for your challenges, look for your wins, and look for your application resources to get those wins and pick and choose your own challenges. Then you go chasing after your goal. And the secret here is to hold tightly to your goal, but hold loosely to your plan. Tightly to your goal, that's where I'm going. Loosely to your plan. It's like, I think I'm getting there this way. No, that's, okay, wait, this way might work. Oh, nope, this way gets me there. So tightly to the goal, loosely to the plan. Create a clear, inspiring goal and a clear, concrete plan that you actually follow. I mean, having a written plan doesn't do anyone any good if you don't actually follow the plan. That's kind of one of my pet peeves of business plans. I put business plan in quotes because business plan tends to just be a document. It isn't an actual plan. How do you know it's not an actual plan? No one's actually doing anything out of that book. So, clear, concrete plan that you actually follow. So you know what the plan is and you're actually doing the thing that you plan to do. And at the same time that you energetically pursue your plan, you hold loosely to it. Ask the, how is this working out for me? Question often enough to upgrade your plan. As a new plan might work better. Shifting your strategy. Trying a new thing. Considering the potential costs and benefits. And holding loosely enough to your plan to create that shift. Always be on the lookout for a better, more effective, more powerful path. In particular, always be on the lookout for a cliff on the way to you. And you might think like, well, I'm going to test my faith. Is it blind faith? Where you're blind to knowledge and you're blind to logic? Or is it a knowing faith that you know what you know, you have the facts to work with, you have the principles as they apply, and you're going to apply the principles to the facts to get a logical extension from what you do know to what you don't know for sure. So you don't get flung off of a cliff that you totally saw coming or could have seen coming had you looked, but you weren't paying attention. And I've got one of those going on right now where I had a cliff coming that was about 3 weeks away, and I took some action to push it back another 2 weeks. And so instead of having a cliff 3 weeks from now, I have a cliff 5 weeks from now. A little bit more breathing space. And then I have a plan in place if I'm getting too close to the 5-week cliff, and probably if I get within 4 weeks of the 5-week cliff, I have another plan to push that out another week and push it out another week, while working on resolving the cliff. So I have a time-buying strategy that I can apply inexpensively. It doesn't take much time, it doesn't take much energy, it doesn't take much money to buy time to solve the bigger problem. Because really all I think we need is some time. If we have more time, we can solve it. We just need enough breathing space so we don't have that cliff bearing down on us. And once we resolve that cliff that's bearing down on us, now that gives us more space to solve the bigger problem and then almost immediately launch over the first big challenge to the first big win. That's why we're prioritizing what might seem so odd, is because there's a strategic game that we're playing here. And that for us, it's big. Now, other people might think it was small, or other people might think it was big. I mean, I don't know. It depends on what your frame of reference is. But we're working together as a team. And we're in the middle of the hard times, and we're finding joy in the hard times. We're finding joy as we go through diverse trials. As simple a thing as go ahead and enjoy a movie. Just because you're in the middle of the struggle doesn't mean that every waking moment must be consumed with the struggle. Take a break. Go see a movie. Go for a stroll on the beach. Read a book. Do something to unwind and find your happy moments. Find your simple joys. You might not quite be able to do the big stuff that you want to do just yet because you don't have the time, or you don't have the money, or you have the time or you have the money, you just don't seem to have the time and the money at the same time. That's okay. I know what that's like. Live that life. But there's always time to just go for a walk. In this day and age, there's time to just find a cool video on the internet. Something that inspires you. Something that reminds you about why you do this thing. Something that manifests principles. Now, being martial artists, It's kind of fun to watch martial arts movies and action movies because it gets us in the framework, the mental framework of looking for the principles and the technique and the strategy and the tactics to overcome this challenge, to overcome this problem, to be able to deal with a situation. And it's just fun. And it's fun in a way that reinforces a positive principle so that we can kind of go, kung fu, aikido, and jiu-jitsu, the situations that we're dealing with. And it helps reinforce that too. And to be happy along the way. So count it pure joy when you encounter trials of many kinds. For by the testing of your faith, for by the opportunity to show what you know and find out what you don't know, of how well you know and how well you can logically extend past what you know for sure to what you don't know for sure, so that you can have endurance, growth, maturity, sophistication, insight, deep wisdom. You can be whole and complete. That the end of this completed process makes you whole. It increases the totality of who you are as a whole person, who you are living a whole life, and that you are complete. You are what you were meant to be out of this lesson. Lacking in nothing, that there's no remaining gaps. You didn't walk out of it with a bad lesson. You only walked out of it with the good lessons. And you walked out, yet you milked it for all of the wisdom you could get out of it. Whole and complete, lacking in nothing, and live that powerful, abundant life, and be joyful on your way